everyone. Welcome to another episode of the Match Slip Podcast. My name is Frank Angeloni, and today's show I'm joined by Aaron from Gamers Guild out in Arizona. Aaron, how you doing today?
Hey, great. Thanks for having me. It's a pleasure to be here. Big fan of your podcast, Frank.
Thank you, Aaron. I appreciate it. My pleasure to have you. So, Aaron, why don't you give us a little bit of a breakdown of Gamers Guild and its origin story?
Okay, sure. Oh boy, you dove right into the big story because this is quite an interesting one. So, boy, I'm going to take you back. I accidentally started a game store in Arizona when I was young. I would say I was a kid. So I'm 37, 30. I'm 37 now. And when I was 21 years old, I owned ManaWorks in Glendale, Arizona. And how I started that store was almost an oppositional defiance of game stores in Arizona at the time. I went on my birthday to a store and they wouldn't let me draft. They literally didn't have enough product for me and my buddies to draft. I had a big problem with that. Big fan of Magic the Gathering. Obviously, there on my birthday, that's what I wanted to do. And so I said, well, if this is, to my buddies, I was like, well, if this is how they're treating customers, then I'm just going to do it myself. I'm going to start an underground draft club. And that's kind of what I did. And then it grew out of control. And I was frankly too young, I think, for a startup company. But it got very successful very quickly, grew to multiple expansions over, a 24-month period of time, 23 months or so. And it got to the point where, and this is unheard of nowadays, but back in those days, it got to the point where pre-releases for me were 200-300 people big. I had tables out in the parking lot. And my place was packed. I was running, 100-player FNMs, and I was young and loved to draft, so we were drafting until 7 o'clock in the morning. And it was an interesting period of my life. And I started that first game store with a little box of cards and like $500 cash in an accident. That's a whole other story though. And so, but it kind of got in my blood. I always regretted selling that company, but to be honest, I just wasn't mature enough, or I wasn't ready for that. So I sold it for like a couple $100,000 before second year taxes, and moved on with my life. I had a fairly successful string of other startups, but mostly I would start them up, get them smoothly working, and then I would kind of sell them off because obviously from the first one, it was, realizing to myself that I'm pretty good at that. I liked working for myself, but I eventually took a job in technology. I worked at GoDaddy for a while. There was a period of time where working at GoDaddy was very lucrative. So I did that. It was great. And then I worked for Microsoft, and as an Exchange server administrator. So I've got a little bit of IT chops with emails and domains and all that kind of stuff. But in 2019, no, that's not true. 2015, I was working from home, which at the time was rare, but I was working from home for Microsoft, and I was making really good money, and I was bored to tears. And I said, you know what? I regret selling my game store. It's been a decade, and I should have never sold that business. I loved it. I loved what I was doing there, and I should do it again. So I started networking, and I got in front of a room full of angel investors, and I pitched $175,000 for a percentage of equity buy-in to open a game store in Scottsdale, Arizona, which was never really been done. The rent up there is really, really high. And that's obviously dangerous for a game store. So this angel investor in there was like, hey, you know what? I'm not interested in this half of your business proposal, but I want to see this other portion of it instead. You come to my private offices, let's meet up. You let me know when you're ready and you can repitch me. So 48 hours later, I'm in his Scottsdale Air Park office pitching him the revision on this game store. He finishes, looking things over, and he says, you know what, man, I'm not going to give you money for a game store, but if you start a construction company, you would absolutely kill it with your personality and your acumen, and I would hire you day one. I would give you a lot of business. I would make you. And so I was like, really surprised by that. But I had the conversation with him, and by the end of the conversation, I felt that there was enough merit in his offer that I should do what he was suggesting. So I actually started a construction company. I started a construction company in 2016, trying to find funding for a game store. Fast forward to 2023, I own Snoring Sky Contracting, in Arizona. It's a commercial property manager slash HOA construction slash repair company, and we do. I mean, there's a $500,000 masonry contract pending with NAU right now. I've also got guys that drive out to HOA properties and pick up dog poo, right? So it's a huge range, but basically we cater to property managers. Property managers don't necessarily care about the price. They care that we answer when they call. We don't make, we don't rock the boat. We don't talk to anybody. We get the job done right the first time, right? We make them look good. And so we command kind of a premium. That's my business model. It's worked very well for us. And so in the middle of COVID, so we're talking like 2020, 2021, I have a closed gaming group on Wednesday nights with Eric Stepnitz and Justin Carter here in Arizona. Now, interestingly enough, I met Justin Carter was a friend who influenced me starting the game store the first time. He was one of those guys at my birthday that wanted to draft with me and we couldn't. So he was kind of involved. He even made some suggestions that sort of led to me opening my first game store. So that's how he and I were friends. And Eric and I met through my first game store and kept in touch for a long time. And Eric and I always kind of side hustled, antiquities and, which would include, in my opinion, Magic the Gathering in the secondary market. And so, he and I were always side hustling Magic over the years. And so every Wednesday night we would meet during COVID and we were playing board games. When we had the conversation that I'm telling you, we were playing, I think we were playing Pandemic. We were playing, it doesn't matter. Anyway, we were playing a Legacy game together. So every Wednesday night we would meet up. And Justin started complaining about how toxic one of the gaming communities in Arizona is, that he grew up in. He's lived in Arizona his whole life. And as a leader at this point and a manager, I'm like, trying to decompress and play board games. And I'm like, hey, listen, bud, I don't want to hear you complaining about something you don't really have a solution for, right? Because it kind of drives me nuts. But he's like, all right, well, let's take a smoke break and let's solve world peace here. Let's find a solution. I was like, all right, man, because he knows I love theory crafting. So we start theory crafting how we would, we're not going to specify the community, but how we would fix the toxic issues in this community. And it's bad. There's, well-entrenched leaders that are bullies, and there's a lot of issues. And for the most part, we're not really involved in that community as much anymore. We're mostly just kind of observers, right? But we see it. We see the problem. So ultimately, over the course of like 3 or 4 weeks of meeting up on Wednesday nights, the three of us agree that the way to solve the problem would be to start a game store that has a code of conduct. And then you would enforce the code of conduct, which would be very controversial and problematic to start, right? Like there'd be a lot of resistance and a lot of we felt like whoever did that, or if we did it, we would be like villainized for a while, right? But eventually the community would like see the benefits of an enforced code of conduct, like community standards. And then over time, the community would begin policing itself. Once the community began policing itself, we believed that the community would then apply pressure to other stores to sort of fix them. And this kind of goes back to my first game store 15, 16 years ago when I'm a kid, right? Where, I was like the first game store in Arizona, as far as I know, to have like 2 restrooms to like basically accommodate both genders and have like good lighting, comfortable seating, like all of these. Basically, I raised the standards, right? And people were driving past other game stores to sort of come and play F&M at my store. And so what happened is other stores were like, okay, well, we need clean bathrooms and we need good lighting and we need, and it had an impact. It had an impact on the community, right? And you could say it's because I did some things, but really I think the better humble answer is like the community saw what could be, and the community started asking for those things and wanted those things. And so that affected change. And so then it was kismet and timing. So we basically, air quotes, we solved the problem, right? And then I had a meeting with my CPA about the construction company. And my CPA was like, listen, man, you're hitting your 5th, 6th year. Like things are kind of smoothed out now. And the bottom line is you're going to have a tax problem. And my advice to you is you invest in some kind of commercial property. I can do a lot with depreciation, and I think it's a good idea for you to purchase a building. And I was like, man, that sounds like a lot of, and I'm laughing at myself right now, but it's just like that sounds like a lot of work. So I do enough work. I've been working. When in the construction company when I first started it, I did all the work myself, and I worked 100, 110 hours a week for years on end. And it's been a lot. So, I'm not interested in working more than I'm working now, because at that time I'm still working probably, 60, 70 hours a week. And he said, well, you do what you want, man, but you have my advice. You have a tax problem, you got to figure it out. So I'm sitting around on my board game night, my closed game group in the middle of COVID, and I'm like, fellas, isn't entertainment, isn't gaming exploding right now, from COVID? And they're like, yeah, but it's a boom, and that means it's gonna, it'll dip, and things are, whatever. And I said, what if we started a little hole in the wall? Like, Eric and I have been making money on Magic the Gathering for a decade now. Like, it's easy to us. It's, I'm like, there are people working on Wall Street that are, savants with stocks. I don't understand stocks. I don't trust Wall Street particularly. And, so what they do and how they do it is confusing to me. And I think the same could be said of Eric and I. We see Magic, we see secondary markets, singles, and we see all that, kind of how it plays together. And to us, it's simple. It's simple and easy to low key make decent money with, we'll just say, Magic the Gathering. So I said, we could get access to, distributor product that would allow me to sort of park money, which would make my CPA happy. And if that's what we're doing, we could start the code of conduct. I mean, Justin, if we want to take a crack at fixing that problem, we could probably do that. And, under these conditions, in the discussion we're having, I don't think any of the three of us would really particularly care about pushback. And Justin and Eric were like, I love it. I think it's a, win, 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 win. We're winning in all directions here. We're making a little money, and we're going to take a crack at helping the community, which, we've been involved in for a really long time. And especially Justin really cares about, this is good. This is good. This feels right. And I said, all right, fellas, well, I tell you what, you guys throw a little something in, just to, you got to put some skin in the game. You guys want to be owners, you got to do a little something. So they scraped together what they had and they threw it in the pot. And I said, all right, that's our startup, right? And this is where the story gets crazy. So, because we both know the average cost to start a game store, you could start a decent game store at $150,000, $200,000. I'll tell, if somebody asks me, I'll tell them $250,000, or don't even talk about it. And so we have, $150,000, and we're literally going to open up, and you're going to laugh at this, because if you look us up, you're actually going to see we're still there. We're literally going to open up in an industrial warehouse park next to my construction company, so that I don't have to drive anywhere. Because again, our intentions at the time are very specific. We're just going to, it's a side hustle. We're going to side hustle, but we're also going to try to help the community, right? That was the goal. It was supposed to be 1,000 square feet. That was our original intent. And this is March of 2021. March 21st, 2021. So, that's not true. March 19th, 2021. This is the conversation, and we all shake hands. This is our intent. 2 days later, March 21st, Eric hits me up and he's like, hey, you got to talk to this guy. And I was like, bro, I don't want to talk to your guy. And he was like, you got to talk to this guy. Just sit down, give him an hour. It's about the game store. You just listen to what he has to say, and then you make the best decisions for us. Because that was one of my conditions too, on the 19th is, our handshake deal was, I was like, listen, I don't like really being in business with other people, and money kind of brings out the worst in human beings. And if we're going to do the game store thing, I really just feel most comfortable if I have control, and then I think I'm willing to participate, and you guys have known me a long time, and I think we can all trust me to be, for being frank, autistically objective. I'll be fair. I'll be fair to everybody, so, and I'll buy in, with the most money too, so it won't be a big deal. And they were cool with that, right? So Eric's like, listen, talk to this guy, and then whatever decision you make is whatever decision you make, right? And I was like, okay, cool. So I sit down and talk to this guy. His name is Ryan. And I've given the full names of all the owners so far. So there's a little spoiler here. So I'm sitting down and talking to what will now be our fourth owner. So I sit down and talk to him, and he's an interesting guy. His name is Ryan Toro, and his background is I'll just summarize his background as theater kid. And his dad unfortunately died during COVID, and his dad was a cell phone entrepreneur, had his own business for decades. And when his dad passed, his dad like basically kind of his last wish was, hey, like, son, take the insurance money and you do what you want with your life, right? And Ryan's dream is to own a game store. And so I talked to him for a couple of hours, and at the end of it, I told him, I said, I feel like I've got a fair, grip on your, kind of who you are at this point, and I would strongly advise you against opening a game store. And I was really honest with him, which is another, characteristic of mine. I tend to be very forward, very direct, and very honest. And I said, listen, man, the way that your brain processes, you're a very emotional person, and it's not that you're not smart. It's not that you can't learn. You can't do anything you put your mind to, but like the way that you process things and make decisions comes from a very emotional place. And I just don't think that's conducive to business. And that's my opinion. You take it with a grain of salt, humbly. You do whatever's best for you, right? That being said, if you want to get involved with our game store, you're more than welcome. Loan us some money, and I'll give you, kind of an interest rate on your money. And if you do that, I will agree to teach you anything you want to know about operating a game store. And he says, okay. And he wrote me a 6-figure check. So then I went back to Justin and Eric, and I said, all right, well, I talked to him for a couple hours, and he wants to get involved, and, he wants to basically learn how to own and run a game store. So I'm going to teach him. We're going to bring him in. He's loaned us a bunch of money. So here's my thinking. Now we've got way more money than we really need to open a game store. I said, we believe we're going to get a lot of pushback on this code of conduct issue. I said, how about it? What if we start a little online store? We're already in a warehouse. Fulfillment should be easy. We'll just do online fulfillment in the back, and we'll just start a little website, and I'll put in a lot more money, because I was a little uncomfortable. Ryan handed me a big enough check that if we just proceeded as planned, we were going to wind up opening the game store with, like, he will have funded like 60% of the game store at that point. And we didn't make him an owner because frankly, I didn't know him well enough. So we sort of just borrowed money from him. But I didn't like the ethics of that. I was like, I just don't like we're going to borrow money from this guy, but he's not an owner, but then he's going to have paid for 60-70% of the startup costs of this company. I said, I don't like that. So my solution was, I'll dump in high 6 figures from my own money, and we'll start an online store too. And that'll insulate us on our code of conduct push in the community. Because again, at the time, we were really expecting real strong pushback. So our 1,000 square foot game store in an industrial warehouse corner of the property that nobody can see, and there is no foot traffic, and it is the quintessential destination location. Very, very cheap rent, but impossible to know that it's there unless you know to look for it. Tons of parking though, which has been very, very nice. So we went from 1,000 square feet to like 4,000 or 5,000 square feet, probably like 3,500 square feet. And I took the keys April 1st, and we opened the doors June 1st. I did all the build out myself. There's pictures and video of me and Ryan grinding concrete in the back of the warehouse to prep it for flooring. So we did all the tear down. We got on there with sledgehammers. We did all the tear out. We did the build out. And then I brought in some of my construction crew teams. If we needed any kind of specialty work we couldn't do ourselves, I had them come in and do it. Hired some local artists to come in and do some art on the walls and just, kind of spruce it up. And one of the things we did has been fairly innovative. I know there are other game stores in North America that have done this, but we started themed private rooms. And you have to see the pictures and the videos to really understand it, but they're incredible. So, for example, we have, I'm deviating so long. Gosh, my first answer to your first question is so long. I'm so sorry. Is this okay, Frank?
No, it's no problem at all. Actually, believe it or not, one of the questions was related to those private rooms. I saw it listed on your website. Is I see it labeled as premium rooms. Is that correct? What I'm thinking of? Are we thinking of the same thing?
Yeah. So we have a fire room, an earth room, a wind room, and the others are complicated. So, but we have three real easy to see and easy to talk about when we call them premium rooms. So each room is element themed. You walk into the fire room and it's got a really long conference table, can seat 8 people. And the walls are done by a local artist to look like lava flowing down the walls. And then we put in metallic tiling. There are like flame sconces flickering. You turn the lights off too. Like there's TVs. Like all of the rooms are outfitted with their own Bluetooth sound systems, really good sound systems, good TVs. Like they're really kitted for technology. There are like receivers in there. You could run a podcast out of that room just with a laptop. All you would need is your laptop. It has those big barred like omnidirectional mic receivers, so it can pick up like the whole room and can sort of like sound good quality. We have all that in there. Cameras, all that stuff. And then on the TV, the default in the fire room is it's like a crackling fireplace, so you turn the lights off and it's just this fiery, all the sconces are, just look like flames. It's super cool. You walk in the earth room. It's my favorite room. The lights in the ceilings have canopy, like actual tree canopy covers. And all the walls are covered in like green vines, and the light sconces on the wall are like vine covered, softer, like it's all color coordinated. And you walk in there and the TV's like a babbling brook, and it's super calming and peaceful. Like as a person with ASD, I love the earth room. My sensory experience in there is excellent. And the wind room has like windy wall tiles on it and like floating clouds that we bought off Etsy, and like dragon snout sconces holding light globes, and just they're really, really cool. And so we build those out and we do all this stuff, and we get our code of so our code of conduct is this huge banner we hang from the ceiling. We also we had a bunch of custom game banners made. We went for premium. Right, like I own another company. This is like, I'm doing this for fun and to try to do some good. And the motivations behind how this happened, very unusual. So you could say we went kind of bougie, right? So it's, instead of $40 cushion chairs or, $18 Costco plastic folding chairs, we've got $65 Super Church cushion chairs.
Did that go into like getting the WPN premium label? Because I saw that on the site too.
Yeah, so we were WPN premium before we opened.
And what was the official launch date?
June 1st of 2021. 60 days after we took the keys, we opened.
Oh, wow. So the store has really it's been 2 years, Gamers
Yes.
Guild.
Yeah, we just celebrated our 2-year anniversary like 2 or 3 weeks ago.
That's awesome. Congratulations.
Yeah, thanks. Yeah, it's been, holy moly, it's been a lot. It's been incredible. So that's kind of how we got there. And I think it's worth continuing the story a little bit to sort of explain how we got to where we are currently, if you want, or we could totally move on to another question.
Oh, no, I'm really enjoying this. This is probably the most unique background story I've heard. I love how layered it is and how far it goes back to get to where we are today. So I'm definitely enjoying it. And I know from people I've talked to that listen that this is the origin story is something people really enjoy.
Oh, absolutely, man. This one, you're right. This one is really unique, and it's humbling too. Wait until the last half of this. It gets pretty crazy here, and it's been a privilege to even just witness it happening, to be honest. Obviously a great question, right? We're still going with it. So to dive back in, we hang up our code of conduct in this huge thing, and originally we were thinking maybe some table fees, right? Because you walk in and this place is It's like I think that says it all. It's WPN Premium before we even opened. Like it's really nice. Like we did a really good job with it, and we had deep pockets. You know, we went for it. We swung for the fence.
Absolutely. Did you have any difficulty with the WPN Premium, like originally signing up for it?
They take it very seriously. That is no joke. If a store has WPN Premium, they're maintaining a premium status. They really are. We had to do video walkthroughs. They had multiple iterations where they were like, well, and this is the thing. I was consulting with them during build out. For example, like sometimes they can be it can feel a little nitpicky and it can be frustrating, but they have good intentions. And ultimately, this is what they feel they need to actually be sure with a secret shopper, but also remotely that you are adhering to those standards, right? So they take it very seriously. And so I took it very seriously. So I was consulting with the WPN program about premium during build out. For example, do you remember those old Planeswalker hangers, wall hangers, banners, like the cloth banners with like the OG Chandra's, Garruk? Like they're gorgeous. I found the full set, and I had to pull 3 of the 7 out of Europe. So I'm talking a couple €100 per banner, and I hang them up forefront in the store. Failed our WPN Premium video walkthrough because they're using the old WPN logo, and that is not acceptable for a WPN Premium store.
Wow, so it really is down to the nitty gritty.
Oh yes, so I think we failed 2 or 3 video walkthroughs before they were like, okay, firmly passed, you're good to go, and then they sent a secret shopper. And I don't remember if they told us they were sending a secret shopper or not, but they sent a secret shopper because we get a report now once or twice a year. Somebody randomly shows up, we don't know they're coming, and then we out of nowhere we just get a report from Wizards of the Coast that says how we did. We keep crushing it. We've done very well, so it's that's been good to hear. But yeah, so like I'm telling you, the first pass through, they were like, "You're missing an outlet cover right there," and I was like, "Okay, like." We're getting nitty gritty on this one. They had a laundry list of like, they were clearly pausing the video and like looking at every single frame of the video for problems, and they were very thorough, and we appreciated that. It was good. It was good for us. They forced us to tighten up to a truly premium level. But yeah, day one we open up and we're WPN Premium, and day one. And this is going to shock listeners, I think, that are coming and listening from the owner's perspective. But we were profitable day one.
That's a great thing to hear.
Yeah, it's been insane. So the code of conduct. So we decide we're not going to do table fees. Before we even opened, we made that decision. I said, but what we're going to do is, in order to play here, you're going to have to give us a photo. And this is very controversial. You're going to have to give us a copy of your photo ID for our files, and you're going to have to sign our code of conduct. And then you can sit down and play. That's how seriously we took it. And we had a bunch of people who didn't come to the store. That's not true. We didn't have a bunch of people, but there were people who did not come to the store because we required that they put a photo ID on file. And our response to that publicly and in person was, then you're probably not the person we want at the store. If you have a problem disclosing your identity, then we probably have a problem with you. And that was very controversial. Another thing we did is when people came to the store, because we went to the nines, we went very extra, very bougie, very premium. They would come in, they would be shocked. It's a lot to take in. The store is a lot. And we would give them a tour. And one of the things we would make a point of in the tour is to take them to the banner with the code of conduct and read portions of it. So if you go to our website, gamersguildaz.com, and you click on About, I think About just takes you to the code of conduct. Oh, no, we actually have an About page. Sorry. If you hover over About and then go to code of conduct, and you can read it there. But the top line is something that we trained our staff to always say. Every new customer that comes to the store is gently, if they say they don't want a tour, then we don't give them a tour, right? But most people are like, oh yeah, give me the tour. We eventually take them to the code of conduct, usually in the beginning part or the end part of the tour, depending on how you do it. And we say this is a safe place for everyone, but specifically due to it frequently not being minors, LGBTQ+, persons of color, and women. About 1 in 75 people in the tour will leave the store and never return at that moment. That's not an exaggeration. That's a real statistic because we count. So about 1 in 75 hits our code of conduct, realizes this is not the place for them, and exits the premise to never return. This is not the place for them. What happened, though, is the other 74 people that come in, see that code of conduct, give some variation of, hell yeah, brother. Sorry, showed my age there. Give some variation of hell yes, and this is where they want to play. The rest of our code of conduct is, I don't want to say semantics, but, it's the nitty gritty of it. And how we handle that is we take it very seriously. It took a long time to sort of get the community to understand that just because you bring us feedback doesn't mean we're not going to, like, if you come and say, hey, there's a hygiene problem, we're not going to run over and throw the book at whoever's got a hygiene problem, right? Like, that's not the point of the code of conduct. Enforcement is a necessary part of the code of conduct, but it's not its function, right? Its function is for everybody to experience a safe and fun and inclusive place to game. That's the shared goal here, right? That's what the community wants. And this is a whole other topic of conversation. I'll talk for an hour if you want about third spaces. This is a real third space, right? You can come into our store, you can sit at a table for free. We provide bottled water for free to anybody who wants it, whether they're a customer or not. And we have a free library. In fact, our gaming library, well, we have 2 gaming libraries in the facility now, but our gaming library is public for everybody, comprehensive. And as far as I know, we have the only visually impaired gaming library in Arizona. So, like, you can come in and we have 15 different game titles that are converted to Braille. Like, we take our inclusion very, very seriously. I try to make sure that our policies and our actions and what we offer reflects the intent behind what we're trying to do, right? And attitude sort of comes from the top. It comes from ownership. It comes from leadership. And the passion that we have for kind of what we're doing is this really interesting cycle where the community really wants what we're doing. They really appreciate the code of conduct. And in return, we become very, very passionate about supporting and protecting them. And it's just been this incredible cycle of, like, I'm honestly still kind of analyzing how it happened, but we went from a community in 24 months. We have now something like 2,800 unique people walk through the doors every month at the game store. And we have over 300 subscribed members. Those are people who are paying a monthly subscription for various perks that we offer in the store.
I saw that on the website. I've never seen a store do a store membership before like that. So I thought that was a pretty unique aspect to entice customers to the store. How did that come about?
Yeah, so honestly, it was kind of a little bit of my brain, where there's an age-old problem, and this can be, obviously everything I say in this podcast is based in opinion, right? But I'm here because to some extent I have something that indicates the opinion is worth sharing. But I just want to be clear. These are my opinions, and everybody's reality is different, and their beliefs are, what they are. And if they've experienced a different reality with their game store, I completely respect that. But in my opinion, this industry and game stores have they've got more than several, but they have some really unique challenges. And one of the perpetual age-old challenges they experience is the need for organized play space to be weighed on a cost per square foot level against the value per square foot, the revenue per square foot brought by merchandise sold, right? So a Walmart calculates down to the SKU. How big is the item? How frequently does it sell at what location, right? They're running deep, call it retail analytics. And game stores have this real issue where they have to pay rent for every chair that a person sits in that building. And I've seen game stores. There are game stores in Arizona in the last 5 years that have struggled with that challenge and converted themselves to mostly no seating, where, like, they'll go to the minimum. It's like, here's here's 4 tables, enough seating for 18 people. Or they'll seat like 24 people. They'll put 4 or 5 tables out and convert everything else to retail. And you understand the controversy or the challenge I'm referring to, though, right? Where there is an issue, and it can be it's like it's all in the owner's control. It's up to the decision of the owner of the game store, but it is difficult. It can be challenging to balance revenue versus overhead, especially for smaller game stores. It can be, and it can be dangerous.
So how, like when it comes to those points of decision making to balance the revenue versus the overhead, and like, because I've purchased from your store in the past, and what I was shocked about is how you're able to sell at a low cost, like the sealed boxes, for example, where I know other stores, and it's all based, on circumstance, depending upon, the store's revenue and whatnot, but how you guys were able to offer such a very competitive, lower price than maybe an average, like, or smaller store, I should say, could offer. How are you able to do that when factoring in the overhead?
Yeah, that's such a great question, Frank, because it actually directly ties into sort of where the conversation is at, right? Like, the truth is our goals, our priorities were different. Generally speaking, when somebody opens a business, it's to make money. We live in late stage capitalism. They're there to make a profit. They need to pay themselves, right? That wasn't necessarily what happened. My mandate, the goal, the intention of owners when we started Gamers Guild Arizona wasn't to make money. That was going to happen on the side no matter what, right? We were always going to squirrel some boxes away, crack some products, sell some cards. We were always going to make a little on the side, right? The intention was always, let's just make an awesome community. The intent was, in the first 6 months of the business being open, there were constant decisions made about money. I was constantly having to make decisions that were oriented around revenue and money. But those decisions were all about, how do we make sure we're still here from 5 years from now? We have to be here 5 years from now. So the decision we're making now needs to be done with that in mind. At no point in time were owners talking about how to make money with this business. Every time the owners were talking about goals and intents, it was about the community. Like, how do we protect the community? How do we grow the community? Like, how do we make this more awesome? Like, how do we have more fun with this? Like, this was the side hustle, right? And that's, I'm not saying game store owners don't approach it with those attitudes, but like, we had the financial freedom to say, fuck it, we're just going to do what we want, and we're just going to prioritize the community. That was my caveat. As long as it's sustainable, my answer is yes. That attitude led to some really crazy stuff happening. And so, and that's actually ultimately how we wound up with our pricing structured the way it is too. Again, we weren't trying to like make a big profitable thing happen. We were just like, we've got to sustain, and as long as we're sustaining, as long as there's room for inflation and room for growth and room for for us to pay the bills, and I'm feeling comfortable and confident, I don't really care. Let's just get aggressive. And here's the other problem too. Because we opened an online store component to attempt to offset what we thought were going to be problems with the code of conduct, you can't look, game stores in the past, over the last 20 years, many game stores have tried to keep separate pricing online. And I've seen it done a ton of different ways. Some are dumb enough to actually put a website up with a different price online. And then eventually they have a customer standing in front of the register in person in their store going, why is it $30 more? Because, it's right there. You know what? Here, I'm going to buy it on your website and select pick it up. There. Now can I have the box for $30 cheaper, please? Right? That's a bad look. So for us to sell online, and I guess we had two choices. We can either sell online at the same price that we sell in store, or we can sell online through like hidden channels and not admit who we are and try to play this kind of shadow game. And I think that fell back to like, again, that's just not who we are personality wise. And that's really not what we're doing, right? Like this is supposed to be fun, not, we're not trying to etch out the hidden nickel here. So it was like, you know what, we're just going to compete with the online sphere on pricing, and we'll make that exact same. So to be competitive online, that's the price we will give our locals. And then because we did that, that forced a whole bunch of process things, because I would start with like, well, what is going to make us competitive online, and then it was like, okay, well, how do we make that sustainable? And that was the most common phrasing we were doing on the warehouse side of things. On the online portion, it was like, all right, what is it going to take for us to compete? And then it's like, okay, let's reverse engineer and figure out how to make that okay.
And where are you finding more of the sales coming from? Is it from online sales, or do you find it more in store?
So interestingly enough, the volume online is, June was crazy. June was the largest gross in the company's history, because it combined Lord of the Rings Magic with 40K Leviathan release from Games Workshop.
And how many employees do you have to
29 full-time employees.
Oh, wow.
Today.
That's amazing.
Yeah. So to catch you up on the sort of origin story to the current day. So currently we have 5 owners. So during our second year, so last year, Ryan from the origin story, we got to know Ryan a lot better over time. And eventually we were doing really, really, really well. And it was bothering me that Ryan wasn't an owner. Because you cannot tell the story of how Gamers Guild happened without including Ryan. Ryan was an integral part of. We would never have shot the moon the way that we did and succeeded. We would never have done that without Ryan's initial conversation and loan to us. Because that's what motivated me to put in more of my money. And then once we had, our starting, to be transparent, our starting fund was just under $1 million. Okay. And that's a huge sum of money for this industry. And this is the thing. I risked it. We didn't really hold a ton. Our starting inventory was like $700,000. We went wide in areas where we were confident, because this again wasn't my first game store, and most of the owners were very experienced in this industry. We went deep everywhere we knew we should.
Do you feel that first game store that you had prior to Gamers Guild helped in starting Gamers Guild with more than just yourself as the owner?
Absolutely. I sold that company because I wasn't mature enough for what it was at the time. And I had a lot of growing to do as a person. And the truth is, like, that game store taught me invaluable things about business, about community, about customer service. It taught me about ownership. It taught me about entrepreneurial responsibilities. It taught me how to balance the needs of people and customers and various different perspectives against sustainability. It laid the groundwork for success in my life, and I'm forever thankful for that community.
Definitely. Yeah. You seem to have an absolute knack for running businesses. It just seems to come naturally for you. I'm curious if when you were giving that angel investor pitch, was that a nerve-wracking experience because you were wanting to open the store, and then I guess you could say the construction company almost served as the proxy to help the game store?
Yeah. So, okay. So when I pitched the room full of angel investors, to be honest, it was the first time in my life I'd sat in a room full of millionaires that I've never met before and been like, give me money. So I would say yes, but like, I'm a veteran, and my childhood was, everybody's got their own story, and my childhood is is a story for sure. I learned young, and the military definitely polished it into adulthood. I learned to just sort of hold that in. I'll do what needs to be done in that moment, and I'm charismatic as a person, which is kind of, I think, unusual given my neurodivergence. But I kind of just let charisma carry me. If I'm feeling nervous about something, you don't really see it necessarily. Or if I'm actually nervous enough, we're talking first date nervous enough, I'll admit it. I think I find by saying it out loud often removes a lot of its power and hold over you, right? But in terms of like feeling paralysis, that never really occurs for me. I sort of just soldier through the moment.
Do you think the game store would have happened if it wasn't if the construction company wasn't a part of the whole initial beginnings, I guess?
Well, the truth is I certainly wouldn't have had the financing, right? I built the game store partially because I have a very successful construction company. And then ironically, the game store has wildly exceeded the construction company in terms of success. And so I think I told you, like, our inventory was about 700,000 starting.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Today, the inventory is at 2.5 million.
Wow,
So
that's a big jump.
yeah, so right now we have a 7,500 square foot store location that customers go to, and I have a 12,000 square foot warehouse up the road. That 12,000 square foot warehouse is itself dealing with, I think it's 11 full-time or 12 full-time employees, and is responsible for millions of dollars of nationwide online orders every month. It's a massive facility. It's bigger than some of the distributor facilities that we work with. And so the growth, that was an 81% year over year growth from 2022 to 2023. Keeping up with that was extremely problematic. Success has its own set of problems. And so that growth trend was hyper stressful and anxious, to the point where, like, last year we were so busy, I actually had to take a board seat on the construction company. So I actually promoted somebody else to the CEO and president position in the construction company, and he's killing it. They're doing great over there. But I actually don't involve myself in the day-to-day operations anymore out of necessity. And that started sometime last year because the game store just needed so much attention, and it was growing. It was growing faster than it's grown faster than I've ever seen a business grow in my life.
How many players are you noticing that turn up at events, like not just, store championships, for example, which tend to be the more popular ones, but how many are you getting, on the regular events day to day, and which ones are the most popular?
So right now, today, we have kind of what we call the war room, because what happened is we've just kept absorbing sections of the building. We just keep expanding. In fact, we're set to expand again another through 3,500 square feet in October, because we're going to take the suites next door to us, or we're hoping to. But the main room seating has seating for 80, and the war room has, it has another CCG table seating for another, I think, 32. So we're at about 110 to 120 seating capacity for CCG. And then tabletop tables, we have, I believe, 15. So that's enough for 30 people at any given point in time. And so this is where this gets interesting, to answer your question. My first game store was smaller, right? I packed people in like sardines. And on Friday nights, I was packed, and people were drafting until the wee hours of the morning. F&M was crazy. A pre-release, I had tables all over the parking lot. People were playing outside. People were playing out back. It was nuts. And I would have 200, 250 person pre-releases, right? But in a lot of ways, 15 years ago, I was the only game in town. Nowadays, I don't think events really work that way anymore. But what happens is well, okay, so with my first game store, we would be packed on Fridays, and on pre-release weekends, the place would be packed. It was crazier than anything I've ever seen in my life. The current game store doesn't peak that way. I think the largest single person event we've had has been like 120 people, maybe like 130 people in one event, right? But what's different about the current game store is it's actually full. We're at 80 to 90% capacity occupied 6 days a week. And if you look at our events calendar, I guess it explains why, because we literally do anything and everything. If there's a person in our community that is like, hey, we love your code of conduct and we love being here and we want to play Malifaux, and it's like, do you have other people that want to play Malifaux? And they're like, yeah, I've got me and my buddies want to play Malifaux. And it's like, cool, this is the events coordinator. They'll put you on the calendar. And we start playing Malifaux, right? Like, we don't tell the community no. Like, the goal, we're not here. This is the passion project. We're here to say yes. We're here to enable the community and have fun. Like, we're here to support them and, yes, enforce the code of conduct and protect them. But we're here to enable them to come together in this third space and just make amazing memories with each other and have fun. And so the turnout is consistent. I've seen more casual play in this game store than I've ever seen in any game store over 20 years.
Compared to like the competitive aspect, you don't see that as much, I'm guessing.
I would say no. In fact, we 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 mismanaged it, and that's been a whole drama and whatnot, right? But we actually had a literal Black Lotus tournament, $15,000 prize card. It's a tournament series. It's still going on right now, but largely it's flopped. And one of the takeaways we've had is that we absolutely mismanaged some of that events. We had some turnover with event coordination, and there were some issues and stuff. But largely, what we've learned is that who we are and our community, they love to win. They're competitive. They absolutely play in tournaments. But for the most part, I would say like 80% of our people are casual players. They want to come in and have fun.
Does that go for the store championships, I would imagine, too?
Yes, I think that we do get what I would call grinders coming to our store that don't. You know what, we're not their home store because they don't have a home store. They go to every store championship everywhere. They're grinding, you
Hmm.
know. We do get grinders that show up for those events, but we don't see them outside of that, and it's we mostly don't care. As long as they're abiding by our code of conduct, that's fine with us.
And what do you use to draw new players into the store? I saw Discord is something that you have on your website. I saw you post a qualified standings on your site to show that you're showcasing the players. What type of methods do you use to draw people in? Because I know you have an active social media presence. So I was curious, with those properties available at your disposal, what is your preferred marketing strategy?
So the interesting thing is you have to split answering that into two separate departments, right? We have our store location and then we have our online store. And to circle back with those analytics on an earlier question you asked. So the in-store, the online store will do just over double what the in-store location will do. But the in-store location has a significantly higher profit margin. And that has to do with basically fees. Selling online is expensive. Everybody's taking a cut,
Of
if that
course.
makes sense.
Hmm.
So marketing is different depending on which channel you're talking about. If you're trying to market an online store, if you don't have millions of dollars in a massively deep pocket for marketing, like literal ad spend, buying customers, don't even try. I'm not saying don't sell things on your website. I'm saying don't market your website. You will fail. And that is just, maybe I'm being overly blunt there, but that's the truth. For perspective, Frank, I spend something like $50,000 a month on just Google ads. That is one single ad traffic, one channel.
That puts it into perspective, like the amount of money you're putting in. I mean, I knew it was a lot, especially with the amount of money you started with, but just hearing that kind of spend, has it worked out well? I'm guessing it has. The business I know is doing very well. So
Yeah, the business is doing great, which isn't really. It's, oh, I keep laughing. It's not really the point. The point is the community growing? Is the community doing great? Community is doing amazing, and you know what's even great too is we have affiliate stores now, and they're doing great. So marketing online is dollars and cents, and it's math. Don't market online unless you have millions of dollars and you're trying to play spreadsheets the game. If you're trying to play spreadsheets the game and make money online, you got to be a big player. You got to be a miniature market. You got to have real cash volume. You got to be able to invest in yourselves, and you have to have infrastructure, and you have to have know-how too. Because this is another thing too. You got to realize, you refer to something like Baldur's Gate, Commander Legends 2, Baldur's Gate last year. I took a $40,000 bath. That bankrupted the average game store. When it was all said and done, after liquidation and everything, we were out 40 grand. That's a lot of money. You just my advice is don't move into that sphere unless you are well funded, because that's what that took. And then and it was more than that too, because if you really think about it, 24 months we went from a $700,000 inventory to a $2.5 million inventory. You have to have, and we won't get into the complex math of it, but you have to have a lot of cash flow to keep up with that growth. It was an Icarus situation for sure. We were flying too close to the sun. There's actually, I don't know if you've heard about this. Maybe it wasn't as important to consumers, but it's a big, scary story on the distributor side of things. There was an entity similar to us like 5-7 years ago. And it was an Icarus situation. They grew so big so fast that they started playing shell games with distributors, and then they collapsed. And when they collapsed, distributors were out hundreds of thousands of dollars. Like, it was a severe shock to the industry, to the point where some of the like contract requirements and things from distribution changed. How they perceive and how they look at game stores and owners changed with that incident. To the point where several distributors, when we came in and we were spending the level of money that we were, they were more cautious with us than they would be with a new game store. They were more restrictive and more standoffish with us because of that.
So they were pretty much trying to cover their traces at that point after their previous experience of essentially getting burned.
Yes, well, they were anticipating that we were growing so fast, because I was telling them, I was showing them, like, listen, we're growing, like, I need more. I was growing so quickly, the demand was so high for what we were providing that the distributors were extremely leery of it because they'd seen it happen before and it burned out. Because, like, to keep up with that level of growth, you have to have that money in the bank. But to do that in the time frame that we were doing it isn't possible. You're not. Sometimes the margin on a Magic box, when I sell like a set box, I might make 50 cents on that box. It's not like there's a lot of money there to be like, oh yeah, we can cover it. No, you have to have that money up front to cover it. So I had to go find huge sums of money to keep up with what we were doing. I would not recommend it. It was not easy.
I can imagine there's a lot of stuff. I mean, from doing this podcast, I've learned a lot about what the owners do behind the scenes, but I know there's a lot I still don't know. But one thing I do want to know as we wrap up here, I have two more questions essentially for you.
Absolutely.
With how busy you are and how much is involved with running the day-to-day, especially with a growing company like you have that's doing well. When you have the time for yourself to play games, because obviously the gaming aspect of things is what got you drawn to opening a store, whether it be board games, whether it be Magic, whether it be World of Warcraft, what would you say was your factor that really drove you into this? Like, where did you start? Do you still play games till this day? Do you have the time to?
Absolutely. So if I need me time, which is a thing, especially for me with ASD, it's sensory rest. I need time to myself for my sensory stuff to calm down. When I take me time, I game, and that's when I'm going to play my MMO. I'm going to play my RPG. I love tower defense games on Steam, but there's a whole other side of gaming, and that's social gaming. And that side of it, oh, I'm easy. I'll play anything as long as it's with the right people. I'll play tabletop. I'll play board games. I'll play collectible card games. That's not fair. I'm terrible at RPGs. Absolutely terrible. I couldn't roleplay to save my life. I've tried. I'm awful. I just try to win. I try to win at Dungeons and Dragons. Nobody has fun when somebody tries to win. That's not how you roleplay. But I'll play anything. I absolutely love board games. Love legacy games. I used to, a long time ago, I played War Machine Hordes. Absolutely loved that. Now I'm into Shatterpoint. Love Winchester drafting. I'm not into Magic much anymore, but I will play. Like, if I play, it's limited and it's one-on-one. I like a good competitive heads-up draft. Or I like a modified Winchester, where it's like more concealed information. I think that's really, mentally stimulating. And, Justin and I will do that sometimes because Justin really loves Magic. And Eric, one of our other owners, he kind of plays, he plays whatever. He likes CCGs for the most part, though. He's been playing My Hero Academia. He's been playing Cryptic. Really enjoying Cryptic. Cryptic's an interesting, that's a whole other thing. Cryptic's a really interesting game. And Ryan loves RPGs to the point where he is a paid professional RPG in our game store. So he's living that dream that his dad kind of wished for him, sort of to tie it in with a really feel good there. He has 4 or 5 full gaming groups every week. So like 4 nights a week, he's running paid professional game master groups, and that's going really well.
And I guess as we wrap up here, my final question for you, Aaron, is what would you say is one of your future goals for the store?
So, interestingly enough, we've wildly succeeded at the primary goal, which was to change the community. Now we have affiliate stores that we will advertise their events in our Discord, on our social media. We will amplify their voice. All they have to do, we love supporting other stores. All they have to do is post up a code of conduct that is similar to ours and promise us they'll enforce it. That's it. and we will amplify their voice. We think the goal was the community, and we've achieved that. We have tens of thousands of people just loving what we're doing and having an amazing time with each other, and that's the end of the day. That's the goal. That's what we want. So now, looking forward to the future with the successes that we've had and that the community has afforded us, these privileges, we feel a responsibility to bring that to other areas of the country. And we think that metro areas are probably the best place for us because we like to build big, we like to build premium, and that needs a heavy gaming population. So, Frank, you said you were in New York before I think we started recording, and I'm sure your fans know that about you. And I would not be surprised to see us in New York sometime in the next 20 years. So the goal is to bring inclusive, safe gaming to every gaming community in North America, and that's a goal we can't possibly achieve, but we're going to try.
And where can people find you online if they want to interact with the store?
GamersGuildAZ.com. I think at this point, too, if you just Google Gamers Guild, you're going to find us. Also, we have a massive nationwide community. It's not massive, but we have like 2,500 people on our Discord, and they're not just locals. If you want a safe, inclusive place to talk about a specific game that you're really passionate about, and you're 2 hours from your nearest local game store, join us on Discord. Come in and talk to the people that love the game that you love. Oh man, our Discord's crazy active. It's discord.gg/GamersGuildAZ. Hop on in there, select the games that you want, and just have fun. Build community and connect with each other. That's our goal. Our goal is to bring you all together. And the Discord is a really, really unique tool for that, especially for people who just unfortunately aren't privileged to have a friendly local game store. They have to drive hours to get to one.
And I'll be sure to put the link to the Discord in the show notes of this episode in case anybody wants to check it out and join. Aaron, it's been an enjoyable conversation. I've really found the origin story unbelievably fascinating. You're a very good storyteller. The success of the business speaks for itself. Thank you again for coming on the show today.
Yeah, Frank, it's been a humble pleasure, and thank you so much for what you're doing for the community and for your passion, and for the listeners out there. Thank you so much for taking the time, and we really hope that this can just help communities and help owners. Whatever little tidbits you find useful, take it and throw away the rest. And thank you so much for having me on, Frank. It's been a pleasure.
It's my pleasure. I'm glad to have you on. So for all you listening, I hope you enjoyed this episode. You could subscribe to The Match Slip at thematchslip.com/newsletter, or if you'd like to send in a voicemail message for a upcoming show to have a question answered on air, you can feel free to go over to anchor.fm/thematchslip, and we'll talk to you in the next episode. Take care.